on figuring out how to do this.
Sorry, I'm sorry. What was that, Cynthia?
I said congratulations on staying with all these changes.
We made it, right? Quite a few people are not going to be with us tonight, so I'm going to start with the open meeting law information, and then hopefully as we get through that, people will start to trickle in. Okay. As a preliminary matter, I am Tina Burgos, member of the Needham Human Rights Committee, and I will be chairing this meeting. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Okay, Sophia is not here. Cynthia?
Here. Woo!
Jen?
Here.
Carrie?
Here.
Amelia?
Here.
Belinda?
Here.
Ashok?
Yes, I'm
Marcus?
here.
Not yet. Okay. Jared is not here tonight. Bud?
Here.
Marlene?
I'm here.
Julie? Okay, and Katie.
Here.
Good evening. This open meeting of the Needham Human Rights Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting is a webinar and will allow the public to comment. For this meeting, the Needham Human Rights Committee is convening by Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to share screen or computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the list of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, I will afford public comment as follows. I will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once I have a list of all public commentators, I will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Okay, I'm hoping that's the last time we have to do that. I'm sorry I sent you guys the minutes at the last minute. I just spaced on them. Does anybody have, I think I got a couple of email messages from you saying, yes, they were okay. Or I did get a couple of modifications. Does anything else that needed to be caught on that?
Tina, I don't have anything about these minutes, but do you need me to, or do you need someone to take minutes now? Because I think Marcus was on the list for today.
Yeah, for now. Otherwise, I was just going to go back and take minutes off of the recording. So if you feel like it, great. Otherwise, yeah, it's not a problem. Thank you. Could I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes? And a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Cynthia,
Yes,
Jen,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Amelia,
Yes.
Ashok,
yes,
Bud,
Yes.
Marlene,
Yes.
Julie.
Yes.
Okay, and I am a yes. The meeting minutes from May 15th have been approved. Katie, do we have public participation tonight? I believe we have, I'm hoping, a couple of members of the Slave Memorial Group. Is that correct?
So we do have one member of the public attending, and I just ask if they want to speak, if they could just raise their hand. Otherwise, I'll assume they just want to listen.
I told the other people not to come till 7:45.
Okay. So we'll
All right,
circle
so
back to that.
No hands raised. So.
Okay, when you see, we're expecting 2 members from the Slave Memorial Group, Lauren Lipscombe and Anna Garay, to join. When you see them, could you just let me know?
Sure.
Okay, great, thank you. A quick Juneteenth update. We talked a little bit about this last night at the meeting with EJN and NDI, and I think going forward, I'm going to add that as a report, since so many of us are involved with that collaborative group. Has anybody gotten any feedback? I'm not very active in a lot of organizations in town, so it'd be great to see if anybody's given anybody feedback about the countdown on Facebook. Amelia.
Just every meeting I have attended, from the very first day, something was posted. They're having rave reviews. And by the way, I saw World of Wellesley announcing an event for Juneteenth. No comparison. We thank you, Tina, for all your effort and your work. It was so creative and so stimulating. I mean, it was just incredible. I think it's really a model for others to follow.
Good. Great. Anybody else heard anything, comments or feedback on what could be done better going forward? Cynthia?
the only thing, and we heard that last night, but I heard it from some other people, not everyone is on Facebook. So if there's a way to take that and put it like on the websites later
Okay.
on. So that's, I mean, it's wonderful. It's one of the richest, beautiful compiling of all kinds of things together. And I hate to see that just go by at Juneteenth, so that we can continue to have it somewhere.
Okay, great. So also it's helped really, I think, with our visibility. A lot of people prior to these postings have not been aware of the fact that the committee exists. And we've gotten quite a few. I think I sent you guys some stats. I'll send out another round of stats after Saturday, just about our engagement on the page. We've, I think 20, maybe 20 additional people have liked and are following us now, a combination of that since we started the countdown. And we've been collaborating with other organizations, groups, just by simply tagging them so that they're aware that we're posting on their behalf as well. So it's been really, I think it's been good to see that people are engaging and want to see what we have to offer. The next tomorrow is something about, it's Black Music Month. So I posted I'm going to be posting a playlist in the afternoon tomorrow morning. I found a really great article, which I can email you guys. If you are not on Facebook, just let me know, about if you're teaching about slavery or writing about slavery, terminology to consider. So for example, we should not be using the word slave. We want to be using the term enslaved. People were not born slaves. They were subject to enslavement. There's a big difference there, even though it's two letters that are making the difference in those words. So it's a pretty decent article, and that's going to be posted in the morning. And then Saturday, for those of you who don't know, with the statement that we collectively wrote, Marcus recorded himself reading the statement, and he did an unbelievable job, which I know he's so busy, but he really took the time to make sure that it was solid. So that'll go out Saturday morning. And then that will be a wrap on Juneteenth. Okay, great. So thank you guys for helping out with all of your suggestions and helping to put that together. It was great. I don't want to get into the discrimination complaint process yet because I feel like that's going to be a big chunk of time. So can I jump to Nuwari? Jen, is there anything? Have you guys met, or do you guys have any updates?
We did meet last week, or the 7th, rather, I guess that was 2 weeks ago now. There's going to be another meeting next Monday. What we've been talking about, we went through all of the recommendations that Nuwari had been collecting based on, I think a lot of it came from the listening session last summer. And there was a huge spreadsheet that I think probably Katie had to make her way through and making it, that kind of identified the different goals and things that Nuwari wanted to work on and attached them to a particular group in town that would be kind of the target audience to try to move that particular goal or on that particular issue. The ones that were identified or connected to the Human Rights Committee were, I'm sorry, the complaint process, education opportunities and community dialogues, engaging in community conversations, creating cultural celebrations, for example, the efforts around Juneteenth, educating local businesses about the experience of people of color in the local businesses. Also addressing, sorry, I can't get rid of this cough. Addressing barriers to fair housing was also kind of attached to the Human Rights Committee. And we talked about a little bit, I don't have any details yet, but there's some discussion about trying to do some kind of housing summit in the fall that I think will involve a bunch of different kinds of stakeholders to talk about housing in Needham. And let's see, the rest of the meeting, I'm trying to look through my notes. The rest of the meeting, we kind of went through like line by line, the rest of the recommendations on there. So those are the ones that were directly related to our committee, but there's also goals around the policing and around the schools and around staffing. And one other thing that we touched on was convening a smaller group of Nuwari members to meet over the summer to brainstorm ways to kind of work on this community conversations piece. And the idea was to be able to bring back a plan to Nuwari in September. And we also talked a little bit about the job of recruiting for the different boards and committees, and thinking about trying to think outside the regular box of how to try to get people interested and engaged and wanting to take on those roles. And part of the meeting that we're having on Monday is kind of a, I guess like an end of the term celebration of kind of where we are, and especially because a lot of us haven't even met in person yet. But also to talk about a little bit more about what are some other ways that we can try to get the word out and encourage people to get involved. Let's see. I think that those were my main notes. I got onto that meeting about 5 minutes late, so I'm not sure if anything happened right before then. I think that there might have been some discussion about some of the committee members changing, but I'm not really sure. Maybe Katie or Marcus might know the answer to that question.
Yeah, and as far as the meeting, hey everybody. As far as the meeting that you were talking about, Jen, that cough, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, it's all good. That's on the 28th, that meeting, not this Monday, correct? The Monday that, yeah, that's on the 28th, I think.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that it wasn't this Monday.
I apologize. I was looking quickly at the calendar. And
No, it's all good. So yeah, a lot of that we talked about is at least how we're gonna, I think, push forward as to what the committee is gonna look like. Some people have stepped off, and I don't believe that we're adding any new, as far as that meeting started, any new different roles of people, just kind of filling. I think Liz Lee is going to be the school committee rep. And then from there, I know we kind of discussed having different people from different departments that are kind of help making decisions from their groups, but I think we're going to work with them and kind of make sure that people are involved in the process as we're doing it, and not necessarily having people come to every single meeting, but making sure that I think one of the things we're trying to do is empower the different groups, whether it's policing or schooling or the planning board or whatever it is, to, if they are adapting or choosing to endorse the guiding principles in the vision statement that we put out, to kind of help them hold themselves accountable and empower the different committees to kind of tell us where they are, where they're at, and then kind of come back to us to, let us know where they are and things, instead of us just telling people how to do this or how to do that. I think when you give ownership to other people, especially through something that's as thought-provoking and as serious, I would say, as a vision statement and guiding principles, to put it back on the laps of the people that are making these decisions and are trying to change and trying to better their different departments and things. I think we think it makes sense to do that as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, Katie. I know Jen said a lot, and apologize for being late today, but I don't know what else I might have missed already.
You both covered everything.
So so a couple of the items on what you both had explained, we're already sort of moving forward with or are discussing, right? We're talking about community conversations around policing, the discrimination complaint process. Is there anything more concrete that you guys need from us or Nuwari wants to see from us? Things that we need to be thinking about over the summer?
I don't think in this moment we have any direct, any kind of initiatives or things that we're doing other than meeting on the 28th. And then I think myself, possibly Jen and a couple other people are going to try to get that community dialogue started within the boards and the police and things like that over the summer, to get that going and trying to figure out how we can, do a collaborative approach. And then I believe myself, the chief, Dr. Fahmy and Jay Spencer are going to be meeting as well, kind of determining some goals and things, and just having a continued dialogue and conversation with the chief about, where we see the town and, where we're going and things that we want to hope to improve on, other than what's going on, the big picture of what's going on and all the things that the chief kind of laid out for us at his last select board meeting. So this is something that's never been done, and it's something that we're really excited to do. And I think we're all going to come to it with a very open and that growth mindset to kind of understand where everybody is and, see what we can do collaboratively to just to continue to do good work throughout the community and involve the community on a greater extent. So I'm excited for that to begin. And I think we're meeting next week will be our first meeting together. So that's exciting.
So sort of dovetailing on that, for those of you that were at the meeting last night, we talked about maybe developing a multi-tiered approach to developing visibility for all social justice organizations in town. Again, community conversations, marketing, visibility, involvement. One of the things that we talked about was potentially if the Needham Regional Chamber of Commerce decides to do their Fall Fest, to piggyback on that and for us to get a couple of tables or tents so organizations can reach out to folks that are attending who may not know about all of the work that we're doing, whether it's HRC, Equal Justice Needham, Chinese Friends of Needham, the immigration group, So that was one of the things that we talked about last night. I actually did email the chamber this morning, waiting to hear back from those guys. We also talked about NDI does the diversity summit every year. So maybe rolling in some sort of voices in unity component to that, again, trying to incorporate more outreach and get everybody involved with, just getting the word out about what all of the organizations are doing, and make sure that people know that we exist and are there for whatever they need. So it sounds like everybody's sort of on the same track when it comes to the community outreach, education, and collaboration, which is great.
One thing that I keep thinking about, at least as it relates to Newari, and thinking about the guiding principles and like the careful selection of language that went into those pieces, that I think, I'm actually not sure if I know how many different groups have kind of endorsed them, and as opposed to how many might still be holding on to them. But I wonder, it seems to me like a big piece of what we were trying to do with using the intentionally using the language that we did was for it to be kind of a tool to open doors to educating people about what words like systemic racism mean, or those kind of issues that require a lot of dialogue for people to kind of get all on the same page. And I don't think that up to this point that we have really done or really worked on trying to kind of explain what some of those things mean. And so I don't know if, in thinking about HRC in its community education piece, I talked a little bit about last night when we were talking with the EJN and NDI folks about what kind of community education we can be doing to kind of bring everybody else on board with what we're doing. Because I'm wondering if part of why some groups may not have endorsed the statements yet is if maybe either they don't agree with them, or maybe they don't mean anything to them at this point, and that maybe that would be an opportunity for us to be able to think about some ways to bring people to that conversation.
Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Katie, might you know about how many people have endorsed or adopted? Do we have a list of that, about how many of us, or how many committees or boards?
I do have a list, and I was trying to pull it up while Jen was talking. It is on the Newari webpage. I'm going to try to pull it up while I'm talking, but I guess I'd say, our outreach to other town boards and committees, I actually have it on my list for next week to follow up from those that we haven't heard back from, because I have seen it get added to a lot of agendas for discussion, but I haven't necessarily gotten kind of a feedback loop from where all those conversations landed. But the groups that we have heard from, I have been updating, and it's on Newari's webpage. My only other, I guess, second comment is that some organizations, I think, proactively have been following the work, and so knew that it's something that they should try to adopt. But we were going to go through, the Needham Community Council has a list of organizations across town. We were going to go through and proactively reach out to a number of those that just may not have heard yet that this is something that is being asked of them, to consider adopting the vision statement. So I think my point in that, Jen, is just, I'm not sure at this point how many haven't heard about it versus have heard and have chosen not to take action. And I think that might be hard to track down.
Okay, well, it's definitely something to think about as we move forward. It sounds like there's a lot of conversion that's going to happen over the next few months. So we'll stay on top of it and keep tracking it. I'm hoping that we, sometime in the fall, we can do some sort of event initial that really does bring the groups together, whatever that's going to look like. Amelia had a really great plan for that last night. We were speaking about it. But I'm hoping that can happen. at some point in the near future. There's a lot of energy right now in town, and a lot of people are interested and are I think looking for places for education, a place for them to voice their concerns, complaint process, all of that. So it's definitely a goal that I think we should be working toward over the next, 3 to 12 months. Does anybody else have anything on that? Yeah, Katie.
Not on this. I just wanted to let you know that Annika Ray and Lauren Lipscombe are in the attendees now.
Okay, so let's, does anybody else have anything about, any other questions about Nuwari and sort of the goals that Jen and Marcus have laid out for HRC? Okay, great. Thank you, guys. There is a slave memorial group that, Marlene, I'm not as familiar, so I don't know if you have a little bit more information than I do.
I don't, I just have the email. I think it came out of First Parish. And because they're doing a lot of looking at what happened in their church. One of their ministers, owned slaves. So there's this group as coming to us, and I'm not exactly sure they want to present and exactly what they want our support, endorsement, I'm not sure. So
Okay,
let's hear what they
great.
have to say.
Katie, can you bring them on, please?
Sure.
Tina, just for the minutes, this is for public participation. Is that what we're doing? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we're circling back.
They have both been promoted. So you should see-
Hi.
Hi. How are you guys?
Welcome. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, if you could both give a quick introduction, your names, and a little bit about how you got involved with the organization, and then you guys have about 5 minutes just to present, and then we'll kick it off for Q&A.
Okay. I guess since I'm already unmuted, I'll start. Hi, my name is Lauren Lipscombe. I am a junior, and in about one day I'll be a senior. Oh, that sounds weird. And I got involved in this organization because I am the president of and founder of my school's Black Student Union, and I work on CCOR, which is Student Courageous Conversations on Race. So I've had a few different connections that I've gotten in with the group with that kinds of things. So yeah, that's how I got involved.
Great, thank you. Annika, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having us. I'm Annika Ray. My pronouns are she and her. I am currently in 8th grade, and I kind of got involved in this when we started learning about enslaved people in Needham in social studies this year. And then our social studies teacher kind of let us know about this committee, and he introduced me, and that's kind of how I got involved with this project.
Great. So why don't you guys tell us about the project and what you are hoping, how HRC, how we can help you guys.
So I can touch a little bit on what exactly it is we're trying to do. So we put together like a little task force. I'll call it that because I'll just call it like a little task force, because we want to, as Anika was saying, there have been a lot of enslaved people in Needham that have been, the history of just enslaved people in Needham is larger than people actually think, because you tend to think, oh, we're in the north, like we're fine. No, there were a lot. And so in order to make, like, to help people become more aware of the issue and the history and of everything, we want to propose that we put a memorial of some sort in Needham, like in the area, just so people can learn and grow from, like, it helped educate people on what happened in like the different areas, what actually happened and what went on in the areas, and just to commemorate those who were enslaved and like because it's tragic history and people don't really know that it happened here, because you think, oh, well, this happened, but it didn't happen where I am now. We're fine. No, no. The North was not completely safe. And I feel like that's like also kind of like a major point of this. We want people to be educated on the issue even further than what we previously believed. So Annika, feel free to add.
Yeah, just like quickly adding on, a lot of people really like don't know about this issue. For example, like I didn't even know that this was happening until like this year when we learned about it in social studies. And obviously like this is a big thing and we want people to know that like, you know, we didn't do everything right. Like honestly, in the North, we're thought of like, you know, we were always on the right side of history. And I feel like it goes unspoken a lot that there were like wrongs here, like enslaved people were here, and we like the memorial that we are trying to build will kind of not only like be in honor of those people, but it will also serve as awareness to the people who live in Needham right now that this was an issue and that we are not always in the right.
Mainly.
Does anybody have any questions for Annika or Lauren? Amelia? Amelia, you're on mute.
The idea of having a memorial or a place designated as place to inform people. Have you thought about where that might be in the town? I'm thinking about the Historical Society. If that might not be a location to address the issues that you have described and your goals.
I mean, sorry, I'm just gonna jump in. We've thought about it a lot and we haven't really decided on a location yet, but the history site is a great idea. However, we were also thinking we wanted it to be like kind of in the town center, if not the town center, the Needham Heights Center, because we want it to be somewhere that like people regularly go. So that it's not just something that you drive by on the off chance, it's something that you see maybe on like a daily basis or that you can recognize regularly rather than just something that you see once in a while.
Yeah, and we also wanted it to be kind of like a more, the more you get see it, you can read it, more people are likely to stop by and like read what we have to say on when we put the information on it. So that way there's more likelihood that more people become educated, more people are learning about like the tragic histories that happen, and like more people have a chance of coming across it. So yeah, we said something like around the heart of Needham or something, somewhere where people tend to go a lot. So, but yeah,
Right.
I like it. Yeah.
Are you thinking of a plaque? Is that that people would read, like a historical marker? Or are you not that far along in your discussions? Are you just trying to get your information out and support from different groups in the community? Or are you really, I don't know where you are in your process.
So far, we haven't decided what is exactly that we are planning to do. We did discuss having possibly having different plaques within the memorial or something, the information written somewhere within the memorial to say, this is what happened in yeah, like to write what's going on and share the information within the memorial so that way people can, read it. But we haven't decided exactly what it is that we are going to do yet. We have a few ideas, but we haven't specifically settled on one. But right now we're just looking for support from other groups in order to maybe have other people come and share to our meeting, share opinion, to share their thoughts, or just support when we do in fact get this idea out. And so that way there's more likelihood of it actually coming a reality. So just support in any kind of way you can or wish to have.
Marcus?
I just wanted to thank you both for being here. Appreciate you taking the time to come hang out with us and, tell us a little bit more about what you have going on. I think it seems like we're in the pretty early phases of what you're trying to do and trying to accomplish. So I think would be really beneficial is to, one, let us know when the next meeting is. I would like to try to be in attendance just to see, who's in the group and to kind of listen and learn. And then trying to figure out if you want a plaque or a space that has a memorial with multiple plaques in it or a statue or kind of what you're thinking. And I know you said something about the center of town or in the Heights. I think the more research and things that you are able to do and bring back to us and bring back to the group, I think you'll probably be better to get more support from everyone. I think just right now it's in such the early stages, and not saying that I'm not going to support you. I don't want to know more. I just want to know even more to kind of get a base and a pretty substantial framework of what you're trying to accomplish. I think we have, bits and pieces, but coming back with like a solid plan, or if that's what you need from us to help you develop this plan, learning more about the other committee members, your task force, and I think overall it's a really, really good idea to help continue the education of all of us residents in Needham, to let us know like what enslaved people did for this town and help build this town, and how, we have not been in the right for many, many years. And I think, over the last few years, we're really seeing that Needham is trying to do its best to be more progressive and understand our past that has not been as great, and some of our present that we're still working on to have a better future. But I think this is a great idea. Just like I said, I keep repeating myself, sorry, but just having that solid framework for us to take a look at or learn more about in order to kind of see what we can do from here. I'm excited for the opportunity though to learn more.
When do you guys plan on meeting next? Or what are the next steps for you and for the two of you within your committee and your working group?
We don't have a set date for our next meeting yet. However, we meet like kind of once every month. I think our next steps would kind of to be like, finalize the plan a bit more, like do a bit more research, like kind of find out what we want the memorial to be and like get the details down, and obviously get some more support, some more input from other groups in Needham.
Yeah, I think that was well said. We have our we usually have them at least once or twice a month. But if you put your email in the chat if you're interested, because thank you for wanting to learn more about what we're doing. But if you guys are interested, we could add you guys to the email list or send you a separate email about when we finally do have a set date for our next meeting. Therefore, we can all connect and try to figure out where to go from there, because I feel like that's mainly our point. We need to figure out what it is we want to do first, because we obviously have the goal in mind, but we don't know precisely what the memorial will be yet. So I feel like once we figure that out, it's going to be a bit easier to put the next steps into motion.
Marlene?
The type of meeting that this is, we don't have a chat, so we can't put anything into it. This is a webinar. But Marianne has been in touch with me about this, and I think Marianne is your chair, right? Marianne McGowan. So if Marianne would send me the information, I'm happy to distribute it to the Human Rights Committee for further, if people want to come to a meeting. The other thing is, are you working with the History Center and with Gloria Grice to get as much information as you can about what actually happened in Needham? Gloria Grice.
I know a lot of the like the research that has been done was actually like with Gloria Grice. But like as of right now, we don't have like a strong connection with them. But I that's what I believe. But most of our research has actually been conducted by them, I think. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Marcus, did you have another comment?
Yeah, so do you plan to meet more throughout the summer to work on this? And if so, maybe the next meeting or before the next meeting, just connecting with Gloria to get a better picture on that and getting more information. And that could be more of a planning meeting. And then the next one after, maybe some of us can show up to that one when you have kind of a framework ready to go. I think to give you that opportunity to just kind of build on this would be exciting to kind of see where you are after this next meeting that you have. That's just a suggestion. And that way we can come with our opinions and come to listen to understand and see how, you know, any of us that can make it, how it can be of assistance and help push us forward in some capacity.
Oh, thank you. That's probably the best idea. Like we said, we don't really have a set idea for memorial. So I feel like once we get everything all situated, it'll be easier to take the steps from there. But we'd be happy to have any of you come to our meetings, share your opinions and thoughts, contribute, and yeah, I think it'll be really good once we get everything together.
That's great. Does anybody else have any comments or questions for either Lauren or Annika?
It's Bud. I salute both of you for bringing this to our attention and your energy.
I would echo that, and I just want to say thank you so much for your involvement. Both of you guys are incredible, and it's so nice to see that you're doing this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
all.
Well, thank you both very much for giving us information about what you're working on. So next steps, please have Marianne email Marlene, and I'm sure I definitely want to sit in on a meeting as well. So you're going to have a lot of energy coming from us, this group, and we will continue to move this process forward. And if you need anything at any time, please reach out to the HRC. We're happy to assist or help and answer any way that you need support.
Thank you so much for having us. This was very nice.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Have a great night. Happy summer. Soon to be summer.
Thank you.
See you later.
Okay, so that's going to be on. We'll stay on top of that. That one I'm going to cross off. Okay, are we ready for discrimination complaint process? Okay. Did you all get the information? Did the Google Drive share work? Because I would like to use that for everything going forward, please. So if you have any issues with using the Google Drive, please let me or Carrie know, because it's going to make life a lot easier in disseminating information and making adjustments, and making changes, and anything. It will be so great. I promise you. Katie, do you mind sharing? So I think we should start. Do you want to start with the process, the flow chart process first, and then go into the form? And then, so also as a side note, Katie and I did meet with Chris from Town Council, and Marlene and Julie, I haven't gotten a chance to fill you in on that yet because it just happened recently. So you'll hear about his feedback as we go through this. Okay. Okay. Next slide. So here it's hopefully clear as to what happens with the process. We take a complaint, and if it's, a confidential listening session, that's fine. If it's something that we can't handle, we refer to outside organizations, and that is all getting worked out, whether it's legal counsel, the police department, another town organization, whether it's housing, school committee, the Council on Aging, the Interfaith Clergy Association. There are obviously going to be certain instances that we just won't be equipped to see the case completely through, depending on what the case is. So you'll see a lot of sort of different decision tree points here. The reason why I bolded the two in yellow. Initially, Marlene, Julie, and I decided that we should present the case collectively to the Human Rights Committee to determine if it truly is an issue of human rights. If it's a yes, then a minimum of 2 fact finders to investigate the case. And the reason why we decided on 2 was to A, make sure there was a checks and balances system, and make sure that the case was vetted very thoroughly. Second of all, I should say B, some of us are more experienced than others in handling these types of situations. So the thought was ideally to have one experienced mediator or investigator pair up with somebody that is not as experienced to work these cases together. So the big issue now, according to legal counsel, is that if we have more than one HRC committee member working on the case, we then open ourselves up to open meeting law. Katie, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, if there's, if it's a subcommittee similar to the group that's putting this process together, so a subset of HRC members deliberating under the definition.
Meaning more than one person.
Yeah, then. it
Wait,
would-
no, it looks like 2 people can be, is that not correct?
But initially we thought that we wanted 2 people to go ahead and help investigate the case. But according to legal counsel, once it's more than one committee member, so if there were 2 members from HRC that were dealing with the complaint and investigating and trying to get to some sort of remedy, then we open ourselves up to open meeting law.
Maybe they don't understand because it's just getting the information. So I don't understand why that would have to be open meeting. It's just.
I totally agree, Marlene. It's just information gathering.
Yeah, it's just information gathering. I think legal counsel may not understand. And this is what's done in other human rights commissions. And it's really so that the burden isn't on one person and they can be shared. So
That's
they didn't have a problem with it being presented initially, right? Like
They
you
did.
have that in yellow.
Yes, there was a problem with a case being presented to the entire committee.
Really? To determine if it was a human rights issue?
That is correct.
What was their issue with that?
Because it's more than one committee member that is discussing the case.
Okay, we need to bring this to the select board or something. That's insane.
I mean, but this would be brought to the whole Human Rights Committee, which is an open meeting.
Can I chime in with maybe some clarifying
Yeah.
thoughts? So there's 2 laws that get triggered throughout this whole process. One is public records and the other is open meeting law. And for public records, any document created by the town, including any board or committee, is subject to being public at any point. And so, Tina, my recollection from town council was there are very limited times when public records can be kind of withheld or redacted if they're asked for. And there may be times during this complaint process where some information could remain private up until that case is discussed in an open meeting.
That's correct.
And because it's discussed in an open meeting, then the idea that you can withhold the records, kind of that exemption goes away. So I think, Tina, that first box is highlighted because of a public records, just to flag for the group that we can't commit to somebody that we can protect privacy, either of the complainant or the respondent. Not that it's an open meeting law violation, but.
Right, okay, yes, so I apologize for that, yes.
Yeah.
It's really just presenting not the case, but the complaint. So it would just, so I don't know if that changes the way they see it. So someone comes to us, we get the form, and someone comes to us and it's questionable. Is this an issue of human rights? So our feeling as the subcommittee was that it would be good to bring this, and this is the way we used to do it, or we've done it since I've been on this time also, to say, is this something we should pursue? Is this appropriate for this committee? So you're saying that we can't do that.
We can do
No,
that.
we-
However, it would be subject to public, what Katie was saying, public record, because
Records.
complaint, the initial intake form is coming from the HRC, which is a town committee, right, Katie?
Yes, exactly. So you absolutely can discuss it, the case generally in an open session. We're just raising the flag for the group to know. Then at that point, if somebody were to ask for the backup documents that has all the identifying information, because you discuss the case, even if it's de-identified in the open meeting, the guidance from town council is that we all should know then that we would likely have to release the public records if requested. So it's not that you can't do it, it's just as you're creating this policy, it's so everyone's clear that we really can't maintain an expectation of confidentiality or privacy once this group discusses a case.
Wow.
But I think a lot of the issues being brought to the committee would be things that would be things that they would want to keep confidential until things met some sort of resolution. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what we heard from Arlington.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, generally when these are presented, you don't use the people's name. So,
And we wouldn't, I mean, we wouldn't, but what Katie's saying, because we're
Yeah, I hear
asking
that.
for personal information on the form initially.
so I guess what we need to do is find out how these, this flow chart, I think, Tina, wasn't this from Lexington, or you modeled this after one of them?
It was Arlington,
It was Arlington's? I mean, maybe we should ask
That was
them.
Lexington.
Lexington, okay, yeah, sorry, Lexington,
I thought it was.
Arlington is different.
Lexington.
We since we were discussing the idea of not presenting it to the whole committee before we go through the resolution process, is that going to be the way to maintain the confidentiality if we don't do that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that will definitely help. So that's why these are both in Yelp, but we need to decide how much involvement from the entire committee we want and or need throughout this entire process.
I mean, I think in some ways, if somebody's deciding to come to a public body to make a complaint, that, it's not, they're not being forced to do it. They're not being forced to tell their story. That as long as they know upfront that there isn't a way to keep it private, then I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I think, like, for example, I'm thinking like when you take a case to court or something, those court records are all public. The only thing I'm thinking about is, I guess, if you went to the police to make a complaint in Massachusetts, those are not necessarily public record. But I don't know. I don't know if that would be a deterrent for people coming forward if they thought that people were going to find out what was happening. But I'm not sure how else, unless it became part of like a paid part of the town government to kind of take these cases in, how you could get around that.
Even in that case, Jen, it would still all be public record.
Yeah, maybe the way to deal with this is to put something on the complaint intake form that says once this comes to the committee, it will be, public record or something. Just
Yeah, we'd have to give that kind of warning.
yeah, or information, or we also, I think if someone is coming to us with a complaint, they as Jen said, I think, they want it to be heard. They're not keeping it private. And I also think it's important for the committee to know what's going on in the town. I mean, we are supposed to know what the pulse is around human rights in the town of Needham. That's one of the reasons that we're here. So then we can be advisory to what should be happening and what we can do about it.
Anybody who has not yet voiced an opinion on this, do you have an opinion?
I wanted to raise a question about the beginning part of the intake. And if one of the things we want is for people to feel comfortable about initiating the process, I think the way of initiating it, I remember from Arlington, is that people could have a conversation with one of the human rights commissioners. And I'm just imagining people in a situation where maybe they're afraid of retaliation. Maybe they aren't sure if this is actually a human rights complaint, and they're to see that form. To see that form may be the end of them even doing anything. And I'm just wondering whether there's some way of initiating the intake that isn't just filling out the form. There are a number of people who aren't used to filling out forms, or maybe, as I said, afraid if they write something down that there's going to be retaliation from the person that they're complaining about. So that was my biggest reaction to that, and it does intersect with confidentiality and public record. But that pre-part where people aren't even sure about whether, maybe this is something that I can go to the Human Rights Committee about, but I'm not sure. And I'm not sure about the confidentiality and the public record part.
Well, we talked about the fact that we could fill out through a conversation, fill out a form. In Belmont, most of them come from over the phone.
Okay, I didn't see that in there, so I was totally.
Yeah, so it's not, maybe we left that off. That was one of the things that we had talked about, that they didn't have to fill it out, but that we would want a record of it, and we could fill it out. And, the person who is taking the complaint can say, I'm gonna, complete the form. That way you get all when you see the form that that Julie put together, we get all the information that we need.
That's a big
The
and
other
then
thing
you
that
can
I think
tell
is
them about the public part.
the other thing that I'm sorry, I don't have a way of raising my hand because I'm on my phone. The other thing that I think is important is that we of the committee need to be trained to, be sensitive to these things and how we discuss things with people that are bringing complaints.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And we discussed at length as we go through the slides, that is one of the things that we address. Tone of voice, fairness, trying to take your bias or prejudice out of it, really making sure that we're here to listen and gather the facts. Does anybody else have any other?
Ashok has his hand up, Tina.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Ashok.
So I like the process chart that was created, and I also agree with most of the comments, especially what Cynthia has brought and also what Bert had said. My comment here is there seems to be no urgency in this. And when people bring a complaint to you, you want action quickly. If we have to follow this process, we meet once in a month. And if we have to do investigation and so on, it'll take a very long time. And I don't think that is something which people would like from the Human Rights Committee. If they're bringing a complaint to us, they expect quick results. So maybe you would like to address somehow. And if I remember correctly, I think it was Lexington or Arlington, they were 2 members were fully dedicated to this thing and they would start work right away. To think about that, otherwise this is flowchart might look fine, but the process is very time consuming.
We discussed that, and we went back and forth on it. So what do other people think about it?
And then my other question, or a quick question, was, is the way that they're set up in their charter and the laws and things like that, is it different than the way that we are? Are we limited more because of the way that we're set up, as opposed to they have a little bit more freedom of what they can do and how they can address things?
Yes.
And I don't know. And
Yes.
that's what I was, okay, that's
We're
what I
a
thought.
committee.
I was like,
We're not a commission.
okay.
We're a committee,
Exactly.
not a commission. And can I just
That's what I thought.
answer a Shook question? This is not a quick fix. And these are not criminal complaints. These are human rights complaints. So this is different. And I don't think that people come necessarily expecting a quick fix. And I think that to do something, you need time to deliberate.
I agree with that, but the moment you file a complaint, you would like some kind of a reaction from the human, that we are working on it or doing something. But if you follow the chart, it will still take like a couple of months before you can even get back to them.
We talked about, which is not on this chart, at least getting a response within 48 hours. So that's
48
kind
hours.
of, that addresses
Okay.
that part of what you're asking for. So at least it says, we got your complaint, we're starting.
Okay, that's not on the flow chart, so sorry, I wasn't aware about
No,
it.
it's a valid point, but it is something we talked about.
I believe it's further on in the presentation. So this is just the first page. This is not the end of the flow chart. This
Tina,
is one of
could I-
many. Yes, sorry.
Tina, I just want to follow up on Marcus's question, just a point of clarity that the 2 legal issues that are challenging for this whole process, open meeting law and public records, is the exact same for any other city or town, regardless of whether they're a committee or a commission. So just to note that.
Okay, so can we, do we want to, present the case collectively, or do we not want to present the case collectively? The first yellow box. It sounds like more people are for presenting the case collectively once the initial complaint is taken.
I wonder if we have enough training that people would be able to determine that without having to wait a whole month for the next meeting. And then if there was something they weren't sure about, then to bring it. Just another thought.
Interesting thought.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and somebody is going to take the complaint. So it looks like we wait. I think that the case would be presented by one of the fact finders. I don't think that somebody has to be the initial contact for this
Right.
person and call this person. So that's going to be one of the fact finders. We're not going to have one person call and then 2 totally different people be in touch with this person. That's not fair to anybody. For the investigator should be, the follow-through person, and the complainant should just know that there's somebody who is working for them, and that it's not just being tossed off to somebody else. So I think maybe we didn't do a good job in the way we stated this.
Any other feedback on the collective, the first yellow box?
I don't know if you've seen me.
I'm sorry, Amelia. No, I'm just looking at.
I know the screen. I wonder if these 2 boxes could be reversed.
Which is sort of what Cynthia was saying, the fact finder or fact finders vet initially take the information, whether it's by initial directly to the fact finders through the form, or via telephone call first to gauge, so that the complainant can gauge whether or not he or she is comfortable moving forward.
I think it'd be a lot less overwhelming for that
The complaint
person.
form is
Yeah,
taken,
I think for
and
that to go
then-
first.
Then the
Sounds like
case
that
is
would still
presented to the
be-
HRC.
Katie, I mean, I think that's fine. I'm for that switch, but I think that would still be subject to the same
law.
open meeting law,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
Katie? I mean, like if just two of us are talking about it.
Yeah, but I, you know, to the point that Carrie raised earlier, I do think we can go back to town council and try to get clarity on, like, if it's an intake
Mhm.
versus at what point does it cross over into the line of a deliberation? Because if there's an intake and the decision is that it's not actually something that HRC would take up, I think it's worth asking town council to revisit
think that, yeah.
question.
And then I think that makes that switch of process much more, that makes a lot more sense, because then if somebody, you know, feels they don't want to move forward once they have the whole scope of how it's going to go, that's like a place they can duck out without being subject to
Yep.
what they don't want to be.
You guys, I'm not sure if I'm misunderstanding it, but I'm wondering, to me, the value in having the cases presented collectively to the whole committee to decide whether it's a human rights issue is that it allows, I don't know, for more differences of opinion to be heard. Like, I'm worried about the complainant that comes in and says, oh, it's just because Jen and Marcus don't like me, that's why they wouldn't go forward with my complaint. Whereas if it goes to a whole committee, then it doesn't seem, right, it can be.
That there's any potential bias or anything that could be.
Yeah.
Never thought about it like that.
But maybe that can be a
But-
preliminary thing, just enough fact finding to help determine whether it's a human rights violation. It's not the full works. It's part of the intake procedure of hearing that from the person, and then later, then another step would be presenting it. But how can you present the case without knowing a bit more about it?
Right, you have to. It's part of the intake. You have to have information.
Yeah, but it's not the final getting the whole thing together, which gets more into the public records. I would wonder, Arlington seems to be able to do it. If there's a preliminary part of hearing what the situation is, of doing a little bit of fact finding, like they say, my rights were violated by this agency or that agency or group in town, and you do you find out what the regulations were, and you see the person hadn't even followed those regulations, you know, you may be able to find something out early on and help the person without going into the more formal
Well,
process.
maybe if we can think about that mental health case that we dealt with a few years ago as a sort of a model, where the person came to us with the complaint, and then we had this long complaint, and then we brought it up to the Human Rights Committee, and it was decided that that we would look into it a little more, so that the complaint with just what the complainant said. So you're going to base your investigation, or if you move forward, to decide if it's a human rights issue, just based on what the complainant said. Then if the Human Rights Committee says, yes, this sounds like it, it still might not be, but then you move and you do more investigation. But I mean, I think Jen's point is really good. I think to have it, which is the reason I thought it should come to the committee, is to have more opinions about it.
Yeah, I don't know. So maybe initially we vet a little bit more, we're a little bit more clear about what that initial contact looks like, not just filling out the form, because it really isn't it's not that simple, right? There's a conversation that has to be involved. There's an initial, as you were saying, Marlene, fact finding, obviously, that has to happen before we present. So if we sort of beef up that initial, think more carefully about what that initial contact looks like or what that process might be, then present the case to HRC to determine if it's something that we need to move forward with. Then we dive down a little bit deeper if it is indeed something that we all agree is something that is related to the work that we're doing. How does that sound to everybody?
I'm sorry, can I just clarify this? So we're talking about when somebody first says, okay, I want to make a complaint to the Human Rights Committee, and they register their complaint in writing using this form, right? Or they can call. Is that what
Yes.
this process is? And then at that point, why wouldn't we just, after explaining to them, you know, that making this report is not confidential, and, you know, all of the disclosures that we need to make to let them know that we can't protect their privacy if they decide to use this particular tool, then why wouldn't we just push whatever their complaint was to the whole committee to look at? Like, why have that screening early on? I guess is what I'm wondering.
There's no early on screening, it's just getting the information. How can you present it if you don't know what their complaint is?
Well, based on what they've told you. I don't know, maybe I'm misunderstanding this.
I mean, you have to have enough information to be able to present it to the committee.
Right. And so is that not what the form is for?
Yeah, I think you're understanding how we kind of designed it before we had this kind of loop with the confidentiality issue.
Jen,
Well,
one,
So you're only
one-
hearing from the person making the complaint at that point, and you're not doing any of the fact finding about the people they're complaining against before bringing it. And that's where I'm not sure that it wouldn't, you're sitting there with the Human Rights Committee and they say, well, is this a violation of the housing authority thing or the aging or the library or whatever? And people say, well, I don't know. I just know what the person told me. So I would think we would need a little bit more to bring it to the Human Rights Committee than just what the point of view is of the person.
Well, that's the whole idea of bringing it. So you would say, you need to check with the housing authority, or you need to check with this authority. That's the idea of bringing it to the group.
We wouldn't do that beforehand.
No, you don't. You just get a complaint.
Okay, just my point of view.
I mean, that's the way it's been in the other groups that I've worked in, and the other human rights commissions.
So let me ask this question. So, because I feel like and thinking about I can't remember what conversation we were having about this, but that there were going to be certain types of complaints that were not going to be appropriate for NHRC. And I'm wondering, like, to me, I feel like if there was a complaint about the housing authority, that we probably, I don't know, I guess my question is, isn't that the kind of thing where it might get thrown to a different town department and not the HRC? Because it would involve town employees?
I don't think so. I think that what we're doing is trying to help the person resolve the issue. I don't know about that one.
I thought that was one of the concerns that came up, was that if what the complaint was against somebody that is a town employee who was acting in their capacity as a town employee, that was like an HR issue that would knock us out of the game or out of the analysis.
Yeah, I can chime in on that, Jen. Yes, if it's a complaint, yeah, that does impact kind of employment or labor laws or anything like that. But for the housing authority example, it could be a resident versus a resident matter, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it triggers it getting shifted over to the town HR legal side. I do just want to comment, Cynthia, I think had raised the point Jen, your question about why wouldn't you want to bring the initial complaint to everyone? And I just want to raise for the group's consideration that even if the complainant is comfortable saying everything public, that means that this group has decided that the respondent will also potentially be part of an open discussion very early in a process before you've made any other decisions about the validity of the complaint.
What was legal counsel's suggestion on this?
One person handles the fact finding
And
and
no presenting to the committee?
goes through the process, setting up a network of allies. So somebody from school committee or housing authority, police department, and all of the potential, which we have all been talking about anyway. We've been wanting a holistic process, right? It can't just be us working in a bubble. Trying to figure out how to work through this with external resources. At the very end, presenting an overview of the case to the rest of the committee once the case is closed.
So then you don't have the benefit of the people on the committee who know a lot and can be helpful to the fact finder.
That is correct.
And there's an issue with novice fact finders,
That is correct.
or people that aren't experienced in finding
I
a
mean, I
remedy
think as
for this
long
sort of
as
thing.
we're sort of, again, open about what the expectations are. And that's one of the things in the slot, we've been talking about this, the three of us, you have to constantly be clear about next steps, the process, expectations. I mean, the concern is what Katie rose about the respondent, that we also have to think about that person.
Yep. So if you're bringing a case, the raw case, and the person says X person in this agency or business or whatever discriminated against me, you've listed that person's name.
That is correct.
Yeah. I would not be comfortable thinking into the future of being potentially continuing to be a member of this committee, doing this process without there being two people. I just think, there's the bringing it to the Human Rights Committee for everybody's ideas, but even from the beginning, I think you need at least two people for this kind of, if you're trained to be a lawyer, I guess you do stuff on your own. But given that we're a lay committee, I think having two people really makes sense. I understand there's potential legal problems, but I always thought that, like the Arlington group seems to be able to do it, that there ought to be some way to do it. But I think it's too much responsibility to have only one person.
It may be that Arlington interprets the law differently than Needham. Needham is pretty strict and, it just may be a different interpretation.
The other thing with two people being involved, I've always felt you ask some questions, you're maybe taking some notes, and there's some nuances that people raise an eyebrow, react in a certain way, and having the second person there is really helpful.
So, again, I'll just say, Tina, I think you and I can go back to town council about if two people can do the investigation. And I think defining at what point it crosses into a deliberation, if an intake happens and those two people feel like it is a case that falls within the bounds of HRC to resolve, in my mind, I think that the question is, town council felt like two people assigned to act on behalf of the full committee can't take action on behalf without it being subject to open meeting law. So I think the question is, can the fact finding and the investigation happen by two people privately? And then if it's a matter that they believe should come before this full body, then at that point, does it come to an open meeting?
But it's not going to be, the only thing that the whole committee would determine is if in fact it falls within human rights. The committee is not going to determine a resolution. We are
Right.
not, this is not a legally binding kind of piece. So, and it's actually not moved to remedy. I would say it's moved to resolution. And, hopefully move to resolution. And then we're not going to do mediation. We're going to try to get two people to maybe they just didn't hear it right, or they didn't understand, or it was a misunderstanding. Or maybe it was worse than that, and then they do have to go to mediation, and then we refer them out. So.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to circle back with town council on Katie, your suggestion, with two people being assigned to the fact finding and making sure that we're staying within the bounds so that we're not crossing the line where it then becomes an issue of open meeting law. It sounds like we're still sort of stuck on this first present the case collectively to the committee before the fact finding or after the fact finding. And we don't have to decide now, but I guess
the term fact finding to me is a very it's a loaded phrase, because it legally it suggests that somebody has made a determination which are the true facts and which are the not true facts. And so I'm wondering if maybe what we want to say there is more fact gathering as opposed to fact finding, because fact finding has a very definite definition to it. And if I'm hearing you guys correctly, that is not, maybe I'm misunderstanding it though. Are these two people the ones who are going to decide whether or not there's been a violation of human rights?
that's sort of what we're discussing now, because
Who's telling
some think the fact gatherers should be not building a case, but gathering initial facts and then presenting to the HRC. And what I'm hearing is some are feeling that the committee collectively is going to decide whether or not it's an issue of human rights after the initial contact with the complainant. This is where we're stuck right now.
I liked your terminology of fact gathering.
Yeah, I'll change that.
Mhm. I think sometimes you might, from the intake, know enough to be able to present it to the Human Rights Committee, but sometimes you might need to gather some more facts before you can present even the general case without saying the names of the people.
So what you're saying is it will really depend on the case, but it's going to be a case by case basis what this flow chart
And
looks
some
like.
of it is how much we know. For instance, one of the things Denise Garlick is doing, working with our housing group authority, is to try to get them to codify the procedures or their, what you do when in terms of their process. And I forget, she has a name, operating procedure, something like that. And when that gets written down, it's going to make it a lot easier, because we could have a lot of complaints coming from just that one area of the housing. But once that gets written down, it will make it much easier for people to say, well, where are you? Did you do 1? Did you do 2? Did you do 3? Because they're going to, my rights were violated because they didn't get what they hoped for, but they hadn't gone through the process because it's so confusing that people don't even know that. So there's a whole, in each situation, there's a whole lot for us to know. So some of it might be our gathering information so that we could know how to present the case to the Human Rights Committee.
So I'm still.
And Cynthia used a great word there, where she used information. rather than saying fact gathering, because we don't know what the facts are and what the facts aren't, information gathering might be a much better terminology to use.
Jen?
I'm still thinking in terms of clarifying. So like in the situation that Cynthia's talking about where the housing authority is not following the procedures that they lay out in terms of their own operating procedures there. I think I heard Katie say, like, if it was a matter of a tenant complaining about something that somebody who works for the housing authority did, that is not an NHRC issue. That's a housing issue, housing authority issue. If it's a matter of tenants within that both happen to live in the housing authority that have a problem with each other, that would be an NHRC issue. But that's really just like a neighbor versus neighbor thing, not a thing that's particular to the housing authority. But if somebody was complaining that the housing authority was violating their rights for some reason, I'd still, I guess, not clear if that's something that we would have any authority to address, or if at that screening stage at the beginning, that's where it would get referred to the external agency, being the housing authority, I guess.
Katie?
So it seems clear cut if it's a complaint against an employee. Like, for example, I think Katie King has bias against me or took action as a town employee that was discriminatory. I think what's being raised now is, I think this government entity or system or institution, is violating my rights, or the policies or the processes are not working. And so I think we collectively should clarify that, and maybe it is a case by case, that when this case comes in, there is a discussion, with the town, like, does this feel like a legal issue versus not? Because I think HRC, you all have had concerns or complaints brought relative to the school, to the schools. That was not an HR employment issue, right? That was more of a systems issue, and HRC did play a role in that. So I think, Jen, it's very clear cut to me when it's a complaint about an individual employee, but if it's a complaint about the institution, I think we're gonna have to work through that.
So like if it's a complaint about the police, or what if we got another complaint about the school? Is that?
I mean, again, the schools, like, I'm trying to think of an example. It wasn't about a particular teacher, right?
Right.
It was about a school policy.
Right.
So
You did have a complaint about a teacher, and that the school, this is another one, and that the principal or whatever that it just kept happening, the discrimination to the child. So it was a system-wide issue, turned out, but they said, our child is in this class with this teacher and this is what happened, and we didn't feel like it really changed anything.
I would be really surprised if the town would open themselves up to letting NHRC make any kind of comments about whether or not they're violating, another town department is violating somebody's human rights.
So I think that's one of the reasons. There's no way that we can figure out all the possible cases that there might be, which is why we get the information from the initial intake and we present it to the committee, and the committee says, this is not we can't move forward with this. This isn't human rights. This is human rights. This is legal. That's why we need to do the presentation before we move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I also would just say, I think, yeah, we can't think of every hypothetical, but I think the town, the town manager's office, myself, if it's 10 years from now and it's not me, it's someone else, I feel like we have lines of communication that can always be open throughout these processes. So there could be a consultation if if an HRC member gets an intake of a case and it is about the schools, you know, I think it's been the practice of HRC all along to reach out to the superintendent's office and have a conversation, or call the town manager's office and have a conversation, call the chief, have a conversation. So I guess, you know, the select board, I'm sure, would want to weigh in on this when you present it to them, but in my mind, that consultation is always available and should always be part of this process to support HRC and the agency that's being, that a concern is being raised about.
Katie, would that consultation come before it got presented to the Human Rights Committee? So that we would have the information to present to the Human Rights Committee from the consultation?
I think it would be helpful, but I do think it just comes back to this group kind of debating of those two yellow boxes, like which order they fall. I think it's, but yes, I'd say consultation with relevant town staff can happen as early as you're ready to have it.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. It's sort of a chicken and an egg thing. And we're approaching 9 o'clock. So I think, I don't know. Put in the modifications that we've discussed. Also with the caveat that those two yellow boxes may be interchangeable depending on the case. So what needs to happen next is we have to continue to refine this. The subcommittee tentatively is presenting to the select board in July. So we need to get it to a point where obviously it's not finalized, but we've worked through a lot of questions, hypotheticals, issues, challenges. We're penciled in, so if we're not ready, we're not going to present, but we're trying to get it to the point where we need to start moving this forward. Mary Ann Cooley came to visit me at the shop yesterday, and that was one of the questions she asked me, where are you guys with this? So I need to at least give them some sense of where we're at.
Okay. I'm not comfortable presenting this until
Right.
this committee has endorsed it and
That's correct.
said to move forward.
I also think that we are shooting ourselves in the foot in terms of being able to be effective if we don't have a very clear process, if it's not laid out. Like if we can't decide on a good process, then I think that means we're not ready to present it at all yet, because I don't think that it's a good message for the community if part of our plan is that it depends on what comes in as to what part happens next. The process itself, I think should be crystal clear to everybody, because that's when it's not, is when people start to feel like that they've been cheated out of a fair opportunity to be heard.
Okay, so what do you guys want to do? Amelia?
I think we should wait, perhaps August, September. I don't know if we're going to be meeting over the summer, but I think the best way to go through this flow chart is using cases. Because I can think of another case and I think if we could come up with some of those cases and walk through this process, it'll become more clear to us what needs to be modified or eliminated or more general. That's the only, I think thinking in hypothetical terms is not getting us anywhere. I really think I can think of a couple of minor cases, not now, but that we could use to walk ourselves through the process, at least this first chart. But I don't think we're ready to move on with this, present to the board.
No, we're not. We're definitely not.
Maybe we can do another subcommittee meeting, and Amelia, if you're available, or whoever can join and kind of work through some of those more realistic cases at that time and kind of like flesh it out a bit more for our next group meeting at large.
I think that's a good idea. Marlene, how do you feel about that?
It's fine. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, so that's what we'll do. Well, I'll touch base with you guys about a time to meet, and it's I'll let Marianne know that we're not going to be presenting in July. Well, Katie, you know, scratch us off. Erase.
And maybe what we should do is, you know, it's going to be an open meeting if we have another subcommittee meeting, and we just make sure that the whole committee knows so that people who can make it can come.
Okay, that's great. Schedule meeting for this. Any other comments about this?
Thank you to the subcommittee for their work, and I hope you feel that this interaction tonight is going off your work and helping to move it forward to reality.
I mean, we knew it was going to be a long, you know, it has to go through a lot of people before it gets to the point where we can, you know, realistically, we knew this was going to take a few months. So any input that you guys have, this is why we are talking about this now. You know, we kind of got to the point where we said, okay, it's time to present this very first draft and let's see what happens. So it's going to take some time to work through this. I mean, I'm optimistic because the select board is hungry, they want it. So, you know, it's going to happen one way or the other. We just have to get there. So it's fine. I mean, we just have to put the work in, and that's exactly what I think we expected. Okay, so it's 9 o'clock. It's a little after 9. I don't know, and we're not meeting again until September. What if you guys want to power through? If you want to kind of want me to cherry pick the things that we really need to discuss? Katie.
I just want to say that so the select board meets once in July, obviously you won't be at that meeting, that's fine. They meet once in August and then start back up more regularly in September. But if you want to be able to present at the select board in August, I think that it would need a full HRC meeting on the books before then, so that you guys could vote for a consensus to bring to the August meeting. If this group's intention is to wait until September after your next meeting, I guess I just want to make sure that that's a clear choice that the group is making, because otherwise I think you need to add a meeting between now and September.
Yeah, the August meeting will probably be August 17th.
I don't know if we'll be ready by then, to be honest. So we'll meet, we're going to meet sometime this summer to talk. We'll get as many people as we can involved. We'll work the process through with some concrete examples. You guys know I haven't been doing this very long, so I don't have any examples to provide. So we need to have as many people who have experience in this as possible to walk us through the different scenarios that you've all experienced in real life. And then hopefully we can come up with a more solid plan.
I think we should be looking at September.
Yep.
For us to make a determination that if we're ready to move it forward, and then either a September or October select board meeting.
I think that's a good plan. What do you guys think? Okay,
Yeah, that makes sense.
great. Okay, so do you guys want me to just quickly, do you want to work through the agenda, or do you want to really just pick out the key things that we need to finish talking about?
I go through the key things.
Okay,
Yeah.
Agreed.
so unfortunately, we are losing Ashok. Thank you, Ashok, for your service on this committee. We really appreciate your time and effort. With that being said, we have now an opening. Also, the students, neither of whom they're both out of town now.
The students are done. I mean,
Yeah.
they were finished, so we need students. Or
Jared had
students.
suggested two folks that attended a meeting a couple of months ago. They're going through the process right now. If anybody has any other high school students, I believe one is going to be a sophomore and one is going to be a junior. So there will be some continuity there if either or both decide to join. If you have any other suggestions, please let me know. We have a few people that are interested in joining the committee. So I've been in touch with 2 people so far, and there are a couple of other people that need to be contacted still. The one thing that I sort of need to stress going forward is that because, and you guys can all see it, you know, we've laid out strategies, work, programming, education, outreach, marketing, all of this stuff that we really want to get done, which is very important. The work of 12 people needs to be done by 12 people. So going forward, I think there's going to be an expectation that, you know, it's not just 90 minutes a month. It's a handful of hours a month when we're ramping up for an event or something that's pressing, you know, things that big projects. The expectation is going to be, you know, devoting a little bit more than that to the committee. So over the summer, I'm just hoping that everybody sort of thinks about the time commitment and can try to figure out what your roles and responsibilities are going to be. Because we want to do the work, and that's what I've been hearing. Everybody wants to do the work. We want this committee to be effective and functioning, but it just can't fall on the, you know, a handful of people cannot do all this work. It's never going to get done. Does anybody have any questions, comments about that? Amelia.
I think that is something that needs to be stressed to the people that are being interviewed, and hopefully we will interview them first. I mean, you have selected, or we will have an opportunity if they come directly to us, or if we have sought them out, or if somebody is recommended to us by the board, that we have an opportunity, or you have an opportunity to talk to them and stress that, you know, what the expectations are, that this is our mission, and we don't want to scare them away either. And this is, we're all here because we're committed to human rights, and it's fulfilling to make progress and to reach some of our goals. But at the same time, I think maybe give some examples or be very clear about what the expectations are. For example, some of the task subcommittee work, maybe just some general categories.
Marlene.
I think it's also really important that the select board be aware that this is a working committee. I don't think in the past they did much real looking at what the people's background was and how much commitment they could make. It was just sort of, okay, it was a body, and so, you know, they'll be on. And I think that's really important, that the select board not just rubber stamp somebody, but that hopefully if we could make the recommendation that we think this would be a good person because we've talked to them, and then they've also talked to them to find out that that this is a working committee. This is not, as you said, 90 minutes a month, but there's lots of work to be done, and it has to be all hands on deck. And if not, then we maybe there'll be another place for them in town government, but this isn't the place.
So I emailed Marianne shortly after she became vice chair, because vice chair does the interviews. And I told her that there were going to be expectations going forward. When she and I spoke a couple days ago, she told me that she would have me sitting in the interviews with her. And I did lay out the expectations. I think it is also important, though, that, at least there's some exposure to all of us. It's not just me. It's not just Marianne. So those considerations have been discussed at length, and I am definitely going to make sure of it for my own self-interest and preservation that, whoever we bring on going forward does have the ability to give us their time.
Well, we used to ask that they at least attend one meeting.
They should, yeah.
Before they make a decision if they want to move forward or before they're appointed, but that didn't always happen. It kind of depended who was the vice chair at the time. And I don't know, usually Sandy sends out something when there are openings on boards or committees, so that the notice goes out to the whole community. And I think that's a good thing, especially in this climate. Many more people are interested in human rights, and there may be somebody that none of us knows who would really like to participate and be part of this committee.
Katie, do you know who's taking care of that now that Sandy's retiring or retired?
We have Sandy through the end of June, and
Oh, good.
but it will be whoever takes her role. They're not on board yet. So I think appointments, if they normally would have been made at the beginning of summer, particularly how much interest the select board and Newari and has in taking a look at our boarding committee process and roles, I think we'll probably be looking at closer to the end of the summer. But Marianne's the lead, as you mentioned, and you're in touch. So.
No, but I'm talking about the person who puts it in the newspaper, puts out the notice. Yeah. Or sometimes it goes out in those email blasts, and that was always Sandy. So maybe she could do that before she leaves. She probably has a million things to do.
We'll make sure it transitions for
Amelia.
I would also suggest that you have the potential candidates look at the annual reports, which are on our web page.
Okay.
Just to get an idea of some of the things that we do during the course of a fiscal year.
Do we know who from the public attended tonight? Because that's one of the ways that's useful to know. I mean, Katie knows who's been here, that there are a number of people who may be watching the meetings, that if some of us know them, that we could follow up to encourage them if they're people we think would be appropriate.
Yep, it was the two students that spoke with you, and then Beth Bandis, and those were the only public attendees.
Okay. That's it for me. Does anybody else have anything?
Just to wish us well, and we will miss you.
Yeah, we will.
Yes.
Mashuk, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, it was a privilege working with all of you, and I really, really enjoyed my 5 years now working with all of you here. It's an incredibly devoted group of people, and I'm going to miss all of you. Just keep in touch, keep me in the loop, send me the emails of work that's going on, and with some of the new members like Marcus here and Tina here, things are really now picking up. I wish I could continue because there's so much excitement in the committee now. But thank you everybody.
Thank you, Ashok.
Okay, I will be in touch with our subcommittee meeting. We'll figure out dates. Let's try to hammer this out. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Wait.
Second,
Second.
Cynthia.
Looking at the agenda, do we have to get back? I'm looking at Amelia's, the inquiry for action. Do we have to get back to Micah, or is that sufficient? Whatever Amelia was doing, that's the only thing I saw in terms of, whether that's something we needed to do.
I could respond quickly. I put him in touch with the Board of Health, Christina, because he couldn't get her email, and she is going to talk to Tim McDonald.
Yeah. Mhm.
About having him present to the board. And she's also she's very interested in the research that he's doing. I did write to him and told him that I didn't tell him everything Christina is planning to do, but I said that we will get back to him. So we have been in touch with him. But Christina, I think, will follow up on this to some extent, and perhaps even involve other departments in the town. I don't know, but definitely the Board of Health will do something in terms of connecting with him.
Great, thank you. I just wanted
Thank
to
you,
make
Amelia.
sure. That's
Thank you,
perfect.
guys. Sorry, motion to adjourn. Second,
Second.
okay. Cynthia,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Amelia,
Yes.
Belinda,
Yes.
Ashok,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Bud,
Yes.
Marlene,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Katie.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. If you have Facebook, continue to follow the posts and like them, share them, so that it's really helping to kind of create the HRC spider web. So it's really, it's moving our message along. So look for the next couple of posts are going to be fantastic. And thank you, Marcus, for doing that.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Marcus.
Thank
See you guys.
Thank you. Good
Have a
night.
good night.
And
Happy
Katie.
summer. Happy
Thank
summer.
you.